The dorm room was quiet, the kind of silence that invited both inspiration and delusion. My roommates had fled hours ago, probably fleeing the chaos of my life, or at least away from my half-finished art projects strewn across the floor. I, Elise Vance, had chosen to stay. Not because I was lonely, but because tonight was monumental. Tonight, I would craft the song that would finally win Clara Chen's heart. I sat cross-legged on my bed, a notebook open, pen poised like a sword. Every lyric mattered. Every note carried the weight of my soul. Starry skies, a universe in your eyes. No, too cliché. Maybe more like the moon envies your smile. I hummed the melody, letting it roll over the carpet, through the window, into the night air, imagining her leaning from her dorm window, enchanted. Hours passed. The song grew stanza by stanza, crescendo to crescendo. I performed each line aloud, singing with the earnest conviction that only a hopeless romantic could muster. My heart swelled as I imagined Clara's eyes widening in awe, tears glinting as they caught the moonlight. By the time I finally put down my pen, the notebook was a tapestry of inked passion. I felt a surge of confidence that could power an entire city. Yes, she will hear this. She will feel this. She will love me. I tiptoed across campus, ukulele in hand, rehearsing my song under my breath. The world was hushed, almost reverent, as if it too anticipated this moment of ultimate romantic triumph. I approached Clara's dorm window, heart hammering. The night air smelled faintly of jasmine and late-night coffee. I strummed the first chord, and I sang. Clara, oh Clara, in the light of the stars. I poured every ounce of my heart into each note, imagining the world melting away till only she existed. Her window opened. My chest leapt. Surely this was it. Clara glanced at me, expression flat, eyes narrowing. Then she blinked, and slowly, deliberately, slammed the window shut. I stood frozen. The sound echoed like a gong in the still night, and then nothing. My mind whirled, but not in despair. Not yet. No. This is merely the prelude, the dramatic tension before the symphony of our love unfolds. She didn't slam it out of malice. She's playing hard to get. A subtle test of my devotion. I smiled to myself, adjusting my imaginary conductor's button. The romantic idealism that had guided my life so far refused to waver. In my mind, Clara would eventually recognize my brilliance, my dedication, my magnitude of feeling. And so, with moonlight on my face and the faint echo of a slammed window in my ears, I walked back to my dorm, already composing the next scene in our epic love story. After all, every great romance is built on suspense, on trials, on dramatic gestures that will someday be immortalized in poetry. And I, Elise Vance, was nothing if not immortal in my own romantic imagination. The library smelled like polished wood, paper, and faintly of despair, the perfect atmosphere for a hopeless romantic in mourning. I sat at a corner table, head bent over my notebook, scribbling frantic ideas for Clara. Poems, song lyrics, even doodles of hearts with her initials entwined in them. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, leaving only a bitter reminder that caffeine could only do so much for matters of the heart. If I could sigh, I would, but I was too busy for such over-the-top antics. And then she appeared. I was speechless at first, and then I actually sighed. Seraphina Sterling. The very name made my skin tingle, not with romance, but with irritation. She moved with calculated precision, each step purposeful, each breath a sign of self-assured competence. She spotted me almost immediately, raising an eyebrow that carried the weight of judgment. Vance, she said, voice dripping with a clinical kind of disdain. Still writing platitudes nobody with a pulse hasn't read before? I froze, pen mid-scribble. Excuse me? Your poem. She gestured vaguely to the notebook. Predictable, sentimental, full of cliches. Clara will probably use it as a coaster, or wallpaper, maybe both. I felt my cheeks flush, indignation mingling with something else, an irrational desire to prove her wrong. I covered the page with my sleeve. It wasn't for her to read anyways. Oh, I see. You, Miss Sterling, whose latest gift, a state-of-the-art microwave for Sophia, didn't exactly warm her heart either. I hear it still sits in the box. Seraphina's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something like admiration for my retort. At least I try to achieve results, Vance. I've ordered that 2 weeks ago, tracked its number, got up at 5 a.m. to pick it up and delivered it. You and that thing are hopelessly naive, overly sentimental. You romanticize the world without ever understanding it. I huffed. Her words stung, but in a strange, begrudging way. I couldn't deny her effectiveness. She did get results. While I poured my soul into Clara's indifference, Seraphina's efficiency ensured that Sophia noticed, engaged, even if for all the wrong reasons. But as if on cue, my thoughts snapped back to Clara's beautiful face. Seraphina had never been in the trenches. But I have. My mind raced. If only I had resources like hers, the art lessons, the gifts, the connections, I could truly show Clara how extraordinary I am. But no, I have my songs, my poetry, and my heart on my sleeve. She smirked at me, reading my expression. Still clinging to illusions, Vance. You'll never truly understand how the world works. Meanwhile, I'll make sure Sophia sees my worth, even if she's blind. I clenched my fists, but a reluctant admiration bubbled beneath the irritation. She was a force of nature, cold, calculated, effective. And somehow, I hated that I couldn't help but notice it. I may be sentimental, I said, biting back a smile, but at least my heart is in the right place. Seraphina raised an eyebrow, one corner of her mouth twitching. Your heart is in the right place. But that's the problem, Vance. You're chasing a ghost. And yet, even as she spoke, I found myself scribbling notes in my head. Chase her anyway. One day she'll see. One day it'll matter. Because hopeless romantics do not quit. Not when the heart has chosen, not when the song has begun, and certainly not when the hater is someone like Seraphina Sterling. After hearing the barrage of that Seraphina's damn criticism. Oh, Elise, your poems are full of platitudes. No one in their right mind would write those things. I was so frustrated that I had done what any self-respecting hopeless romantic would do. I wrote an entire book of poetry dedicated to Clara. Each page overflowed with longing, metaphors, and starry-eyed confessions. I presented it to her with trembling hands, a small bow in my posture. With trembling hands, I approached her dorm, imagining the gasp, the awe, the immediate acknowledgement of the depth of my devotion. My heart raced, each step a drumbeat of destiny. I knocked. Clara opened the door, expression polite but weary. She took the book in her hands, flipping through a page or two. Oh, thank you, she murmured, her tone flat but not unkind. I'll add it to the pile. The words hit me like a minor chord in a symphony, discordant, jarring. Add it to the pile? I asked, trying to mask the crack in my voice with a smile. She shook her head slowly, an almost imperceptible shrug. It's just something I keep. I felt my stomach tighten, but my internal monologue refused to interpret this as rejection. After all, she kept it. Holy crap! That meant something, right? Back in my dorm, Jenny, my ever-patient roommate, tried to explain gently. Elise, Clara probably has hundreds of your attempts. She doesn't exactly discard them because she likes keeping her options. But my romantic imagination refused to yield. The fires of my heart could not be doused by Jenny's words of reason and, evidence. At least she keeps them. That has to count for something. Still reeling, I stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping the night breeze would clear my head. And then I saw her, Serafina Sterling, leaning against the lamppost like she had been placed there by fate, watching me. "Vance," she called, her voice calm but pointed. "Still writing love songs and filling the RA's email with complaints?" I instantly hid the book I was working on behind my back and tried to adopt her tone. "Sterling, I hear your latest, asset was received by Sophia's mailbox." We squared off, tension crackling. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us, rivals and mirrors, reflections of our own absurd obsession. You know, I said, brimming with a mix of frustration and romantic conviction, your rigid, methodical methods will never win Sophia over. And one more thing. And you, Serafina cut in sharp as ever, will never win Clara. You waste your time with those doodles, those sappy poems. You're deluding yourself. I froze, staring at her. There it was again. The unvarnished truth, delivered with the bluntness I'd come to both loathe and secretly respect. Ah, my fated rival. Only in Under the Stars can two queens stand before each other in battle. But only I, Elise Vance, will leave victorious. Without thinking, I said, "All right, let's make this interesting. A wager." Her brow arched, a hint of curiosity flashing. "A wager?" "Yes. Whoever's crush ultimately falls for them first wins. The loser has to put on a clown costume and run down the campus square." Serafina's perfectly composed mask did not falter at the dare. She and I remembered the last streaker who got arrested there. She studied me for a long beat, like she was already measuring my nose to put the red foam ball on it. Then, with a half smile, she extended her hand. "Deal. But don't get your hopes up, Vance." I shook it, the weight of our pact settling over us. "Just you wait, Serafina. I'll have Clara's hand in my own soon enough, while you sit alone in your fancy car." The world, as I saw it, was a stage, and I, Elise Vance, was the playwright, composer, and leading lady of the grandest romance the campus had ever witnessed. Every heartbeat, every glance, every sigh was meticulously orchestrated for Clara Chen. My current masterpiece, a surprise picnic, right at the edge of the campus lake. I had spent hours researching Clara's favorite foods, and had even handmade a bracelet with a tiny moon charm, because the moon always reminded me of her. I imagined her stepping out of her dorm, eyes widening in awe, gasping softly, and then me kneeling, offering the bracelet and pastries, as if the universe itself had conspired to create this perfect moment. But reality, of course, has a way of puncturing dreams with subtle cruelty. Clara accepted the bracelet, muttered something polite, and then, inevitably, shifted the conversation. Her eyes never lingered, her attention was elsewhere, and her faint, backhanded compliments left a lingering ache. She didn't even take a bite out of the heart-shaped pastries. I sighed, brushing the disappointment aside with my usual resolve. Tomorrow I'll write the song. Next week I'll prepare a sonnet under the moonlight. Eventually she'll understand. Eventually she'll see me. Meanwhile, Serafina Sterling operated in an entirely different dimension. She was a force of efficiency and precision. I saw her in the quad, handing Sophia the latest designer bag she'd casually dropped hints about. Then, I heard Sophia went with another friend with the tickets to an exclusive concert, an all-expense trip paid for by Serafina herself. She was everywhere Sophia wanted her to be, always one step ahead, anticipating needs and desires with uncanny foresight. I watched her sitting on the curb alone from across the campus lawn, feeling a little pang of sympathy for my rival. Sometimes, in our parallel despair, I couldn't help but feel a strange kinship, both of us chasing hearts that didn't or couldn't see us. Both of us pouring ourselves into gestures that felt grand and meaningful but were ultimately ignored. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Both of our approaches faltered. Clara's detached elegance deflected my romantic displays, leaving me suspended between hope and confusion. Sophia's transactional interest left Serafina frustrated, her meticulous plans rewarded with fleeting smiles and sporadic attention. One afternoon, I lingered near the library, watching Serafina escort Sophia with yet another perfect gift, and I thought, maybe she's winning, but is she happy? The truth was, our pursuits, our dreams, our elaborate gestures, though beautiful in their intent, were fundamentally doomed. And yet, neither of us would admit it, not to ourselves, not to anyone. I began to forget about the clown suit. I packed up my notebook and smiled to myself, letting the cool breeze wash over my disappointment. Tomorrow I'd try again. A new song, a new poem, a new plan. Because the hopeless romantic never quits. And perhaps in some parallel world, Serafina would continue her quest for Sophia with equal fervour, each of us blissfully unaware that our stories were spiralling into absurdity. After the great midterm debacle, I still didn't win her over. I felt a sudden rock fall in my heart, but luckily I heard Serafina didn't win Sophia over with her complete ledger of gifts. I was lying in my bed, hanging on to that and my phone like a lifeline. It started as an idle scroll. I wasn't looking for heartbreak, just a mixture of a writer's block and pure, unadulterated doom scrolling. Just updates, cute photos, maybe a glimpse of Clara laughing, a picture of the sky she had posted with a fleeting thought that I'd somehow interpret as a sign. My fingers swiped absent-mindedly, leaving a trail of half-drunk coffee stains on my notebook as I scrolled. And then I saw it. A photo, a story. Clara and Sophia, together. Not just together, as friends who sometimes shared a joke or a coffee. No, the intimacy was unmistakable. Clara's arm draped casually over Sophia's shoulder. Sophia leaned in, forehead touching Clara's temple, in that effortless, natural closeness that no staged photograph could replicate. Both of them were laughing, carefree, happy in a way that had never included me. I tapped the screen again, unwilling to believe what I was seeing. Another photo, this one from high school, a cozy selfie. Clara's peace sign, Sophia grinning beside her. More images followed. Them shopping, sharing a meal, laughing, whispering secrets. Every picture a nail in the coffin of my meticulously constructed romantic fantasies. My breath hitched, my chest tightened. The poetry, the songs, the handcrafted gifts, all the elaborate plans, all the weeks of hope and sleepless nights, collapsed in an instant. I staggered back from my desk, clutching my phone like it was a live grenade. How could I have been so blind? The absurdity of it all hit me like a tidal wave. My confident boast to Serafina, my imagined future with Clara, even my internal monologue filled with heroic and poetic conviction, all revealed as laughably futile. I had been performing a one-woman show for an audience that wasn't there, investing my heart in a story Clara had never wanted to star in. The humiliation was tangible. I felt it as a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders, the fluorescent dorm light suddenly too harsh, the air too thin. I swiped frantically, hoping to erase reality, but it remained, mocking me with every image. One of them in high school uniforms, another with her flashing the peace sign in front of the other. Hand-holding. God, not the hand-holding. And then my phone vibrated. The name on the screen made me flinch. Seraphina Sterling. For a moment, the world stopped. Then my mind reeled. Oh, please, no. I so cannot deal with her right now. Why would she call? To gloat? To revel in my sudden crushing despair? My fingers hovered over the decline button, my knuckles white. But curiosity, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of shared misery, won out. I answered, my voice trembling. No, Vance, be brave. Hello, I croaked. My damn adorable voice had betrayed me. The line went quiet for a beat, and then, you saw it too, right? My heart thudded, not with hope, not with anger, but with a strange, aching recognition. She had seen it too, and somehow that made it less lonely. I didn't want to admit it. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yes, I saw it on Clara's feed. I trailed off, words failing me as the enormity of my humiliation set in. Silence fell between us, heavy, awkward, a shared acknowledgement of the absurdity of our respective positions. Vance, Seraphina finally said, softer than I'd ever heard her, how do you feel about them being together? And for the first time in a long while, I didn't know how to answer. My voice caught in my throat. I wanted to be brave, to recite a poem, to compose a song, to turn this into a dramatic declaration. But nothing fit the moment. Instead, I let the silence stretch, and in that quiet, I felt the sharp, raw edge of reality, and a strange, unexpected camaraderie forming on the other end of the line. My hand hovered over the phone, gripping it as if it was a grenade about to explode. The aftermath of my Instagram discovery had left me raw, humiliated, and for once entirely unable to write. I cleared my throat. Come to gloat over how Clara chose minimal, succinctly non-poetic wallpaper instead. There was a pause. Then Seraphina's voice, uncharacteristically soft, filled the line. Vance, you saw Sophia's post too, right? I exhaled, relief and dread mingling. Yes, on Clara's feed. God, I can't believe it. We were silent for a moment, each of us absorbing the enormity of our shared embarrassment. Usually she would have a sharp, biting remark, but now there was something else, something human, vulnerable, almost tentative. Vance, she finally said, voice steady but quiet. How do you feel about them being together? I hesitated, unsure how to articulate the jumble of humiliation, heartbreak, and bitter amusement. I don't know. It's like... My voice cracked. Like they were watching us from afar. A train wreck I personally conducted off a bridge. There was a soft, almost imperceptible sigh on the other end. When I said, you'll never win Clara over, that day in the library, I wasn't entirely talking about you. I lay one ear on the pillow, holding the phone next to me on it. No? Her voice continued. There was something inside of it that I had never heard before. Vulnerability. I had a sinking feeling that I'd never be with Sophia, no matter what I did. And somehow, telling you that felt easier than admitting it to myself. I blinked at my dorm wall. Well, if it's any consolation to you, I'm currently Googling for a very large rock to live under, I murmured, and for a brief moment my voice carried a trace of dark humour, even in my despair. A quiet chuckle came through the line. You and me both, Vance. I feel like I want to change my name and live in Antarctica for the next 2 semesters. I smiled, despite everything, imagining the two of us, cloaked in scarves and ridiculous hats, trudging across icy landscapes, wallowing in shared misery. I was about to hang up, to stew in my own helplessness, when Serafina added, almost casually, "I'm coming over." I instantly shot out of bed, awake now. Those conspiratorial words were like a beacon lit. Serafina is coming over. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt utterly nervous. More nervous than when I sang the 7th song for Clara. The knock on my dorm door was sharp, deliberate. My heart thumped, not from hope, but from the strange tension that always accompanied Serafina Sterling. I opened it to find her standing there, hair perfectly arranged, clothes immaculate, expression unreadable. She raised an eyebrow at the chaos behind me, scattered notebooks, half-empty mugs, and the faint aroma of burnt lavender tea. "You live like this?" she asked, tilting her head. I flushed. "And you live like..." "Probably immaculate spreadsheets, just like your love life," I shot back a little too sharply, a little too defeatedly. The words came out more resigned than sarcastic. She smirked. "Yes, actually." Somehow, that one exchange broke the ice. Serafina stepped in, surveying the mess like a CEO in a knitted sweater and linen pants. I flopped onto my bed and she perched on the desk chair, legs crossed, her posture perfect, her expression finally morphed into something almost human. "I can't believe how much of myself I wasted on her," I admitted, voice low, dragging my hand across my face. "All of the songs, the poetry, the picnic fails." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Sophia was exhausting. I bought her things, arranged vacations, did everything she hinted at. And for what? She treated me like an ATM, a big, expensive idiot." I laughed bitterly. "And Clara?" She just smiled politely, kept the gifts, and walked away. Hundreds of attempts, all underneath her wobbly table leg or in the dumpster by now. We were quiet for a moment, letting the weight of our shared foolishness settle. Then, almost simultaneously, we realized we had been the punchlines of our own romantic comedy. Clara and Sophia had been laughing at us long before this Instagram revelation. The revelation hit like a jolt of electricity. We looked at each other, and for the first time there was no rivalry, no judgment, just a shared recognition of utter absurdity. "So," I said, trying to lighten the mood, "we're both clowns." Serafina raised an eyebrow. "Clowns? You're not going to make us run through the campus square, are you?" I ignored the question. Of course, we weren't going to actually do that. We ended in a draw. Still, a small grin tugged at my face despite myself. A wry one, but still. Two idiots in love with people who weren't there for us. We're the clowns in their circus. She studied me for a moment, then let out a soft, almost conspiratorial laugh. "I suppose that makes sense." And just like that, the dynamic shifted. From adversaries, we became co-conspirators in a very small, very ridiculous rebellion against heartbreak. We started meeting at cafes, on park benches, staying up at night to rant and vent. It wasn't romantic yet, at least not in the traditional sense, but it was connection, raw and unguarded. The critical moment came when our eyes met across a crowded cafe. In that instant, I saw it. The same bewilderment, the same exposed vulnerability that mirrored my own. It was a silent acknowledgement, a bond forged in the fires of mutual failure. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt hope. Not for Clara, not for Sophia, but for something else. Something real, Something that didn't require grand gestures or perfect plans. Something with Serafina Sterling. It started with cheap wine, 2 cheap mismatched stemware pieces from Target, and a late-night rant that refused to end. I was sprawled across my dorm bed, hair a tangled halo of stress and hopelessness, and Serafina was perched onto the floor, knees drawn to her chest, sipping from a paper cup like a general, surveying the aftermath of a battle. She still had not gotten used to my messy dorm, but my roommates were out tonight. "I just can't believe we ended up like this," I said, voice dramatic, gesturing vaguely at the chaotic dorm around me. We'd just hashed out an hour of complaints over Sophia's latest 9-square gallery on Instagram. Serafina stared at me for a long moment, the corners of her mouth twitching. "You know," she said finally, "we really are clowns." I froze. Then, with theatrical flair, I threw my arms up. "Yes, that's it. Get the clown car. You get me now, Serafina. We're honking our horns, juggling invisible objects, and somehow here we are, still upright." She actually laughed, a sound so rare and unguarded that I paused, stunned. "Fine," she said, shaking her head. "We're in the clown car together. Happy?" "Ecstatic," I replied, grinning like a fool. And somehow that simple acknowledgement of our shared absurdity was the most comforting thing in the world. Actually, the wine was beginning to make the world spin. "Better get my clown shoes," Serafina muttered to herself as she stumbled out my door. I laughed, but heard her quietly add, "Good night, Elise." The next morning, my alarm clock dragged me from a fitful sleep. I opened the door to find Serafina leaning against a flashy, hot pink Porsche, her expression unapologetically smug. "Seriously?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She shrugged, perfectly casual. "We're going out, clear our heads, somewhere nice." I stepped closer, hands on my hips, trying to conceal my mix of admiration and disbelief. "Your clown car is very expensive and very nice. I'm fairly certain Sophia would throw a tantrum if you ever gave her this." Serafina's lips quirked in the faintest smile. "That's too bad for her. I had the clown suit pressed by my butler this morning." I climbed in, and she hit the gas, the engine purring like a symphony of potential. As we drove away from campus, from Clara, from Sophia, from all the heartbreak and humiliation, I realized something. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't performing for anyone. I wasn't writing poetry for unrequited love. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. We were just us, 2 fools, 2 clowns, finding comfort in the ridiculousness of our own failures, going 80 on the highway to God knows where. What started as a single absurd late-night confession had become a ritual. Our clown car therapy sessions, sometimes a drive, sometimes a walk through the park, sometimes a trip to a late-night cafe, became our way of surviving the wreckage of unrequited love. At first, I thought it was just distraction, a way to vent, to laugh at our own ridiculousness, to feel less alone. But slowly, I realized something deeper was happening. My poetry itches were returning to me. My songs, too. Serafina, for all her rigid precision and cold exterior, was reliable. She showed up, never complained, never judged my over-the-top ideas for places to go, and she actually listened when I ranted about Clara's indifference. I started to notice the details she remembered, my favorite flowers, my odd habits when I was nervous, even the little lines of poetry I muttered under my breath. And it wasn't just that she noticed. It mattered to her in the quietest, most unassuming ways. I caught myself smiling when she laughed at my excessive dramatics, not because it flattered me, but because it felt real, something I had never experienced with Clara. She never laughed once at my jokes, never took my conversation seriously. One rainy afternoon, we ducked into a small cafe to avoid the downpour. I was rambling about the perfect rhyme I had been working on for Clara when she interrupted me with that deadpan humour she wielded like a scalpel. "You know, Elise," she said, gesturing at my scribbled notebook, "you could actually get famous if you stopped writing exclusively for people who will never read it." I laughed, almost choking on my coffee, and felt a warm flush creep up my neck. That tiny critique, so practical and unromantic, felt like genuine engagement. She cared, not about me winning anyone's affection, but about me. And slowly, ever so subtly, my thoughts began to shift. I noticed her when she laughed at something mundane, the way she brushed her hair from her face, the curve of her brow when she was thinking. I found myself anticipating our meetings, replaying our conversations, cherishing her rare smiles like precious keepsakes. I couldn't talk to her afterwards. The irony wasn't lost on me even as she took me home in that pink Porsche. Here I was, the hopeless romantic, falling, not for Clara, not for Sophia, but for the girl I had spent months competing with. I hid the journal from her. Not because they were embarrassing failures to be sent to anyone, but they were the recorded secrets of feelings blooming inside of me. My mind, which had once been consumed with grand gestures and poetic confessions, was now captivated by Serafina's reliability, her understated warmth, the way she could see through the theatrics and still choose to stay. Yet, one question lingered, unspoken, untested. Did she feel the same way about me? Every glance, every shared laugh, every road trip in our metaphorical and literal clown car brought us closer. But the uncertainty hung between us, delicate and thrilling, like a note held at the peak of a chord. I didn't know what the answer was, but I knew one thing. This was the first love I had been allowed to experience on equal footing, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The taco truck was the perfect disaster. Serafina had insisted on it, though she admitted under her breath that she had never gone to a place like this before. Another surprise. The line was long, the salsa smelled like liquid fire, and the tortillas were slightly soggy. Yet, somehow it felt perfect, not because of the food, but because we were together, laughing at the absurdity of the experience. I lifted the burrito behemoth in front of me, feeling like it was going to eat me, rather than being a simple dinner meal. "Okay, seriously," she said, wiping a smear of spicy sauce up from her lip. "You go dashing in the rain with the guitar in hand, belting your head off, but this is where you stop." I felt indignant. "That's different. These fingers are for plucking strings, not getting messy. You'd never understand, Serafina." She rolled her eyes but smiled, and I noticed it. The subtle warmth behind her usual pragmatism. The hint of softness that only appeared when she wasn't performing competence like armor. Later, we wandered to a nearby park, the sky painting streaks of pink and gold above us. We sat on a bench, the world around us falling away in that quiet shared space that seemed to exist just for us. "Do you ever feel like your life is dictated by other people's expectations?" she asked, suddenly looking out over the pond. Her voice was quieter than usual, almost fragile. I tilted my head, sensing something deeper beneath her words. "Sometimes. Why?" "My mother," she said, twisting a strand of her hair, "she always said competence is the highest form of virtue, that if you weren't actively solving a problem, you were being inefficient. I guess I saw Sophia and I thought if I was competent enough, if I could solve all her problems, maybe I'd be enough for her." The confession landed softly, heavy with self-blame. I reached out, just a brush of a hand near hers, careful not to overstep. "Serafina, fixing yourself when there's nothing broken inside you to begin with is incompetence." Her eyes met mine, and for a heartbeat, everything paused. The vulnerable truth she had carried alone suddenly shared, acknowledged, My chest tightened, not from grand romantic gestures, but from the quiet honesty between us. I, initially, she began, hesitating, didn't like your poetry at all, or your music, or the way you chase love with such wild abandon. She laughed softly, but it was almost nervous. But really, I was afraid of being brave like you. I blinked. Afraid of me? No, she said, shaking her head, afraid of being myself. But now, I admire it. I admire your courage, your resilience, the way you give everything without calculating the risk. My heart thumped. The subtle shift in her tone, the quiet admiration, it was more intimate than any sonnet I could have written. I smiled, unable to resist teasing gently. You mean the nerd who once called my songs platitudes is impressed by me now? She instantly demurred, pouting, but it made my heartbeat leap. Who's impressed by your poems? For the first time, the barrier between us, the rivalry, the misjudgments, the past humiliations, fell away. We weren't just allies in heartbreak. We were two people discovering the raw, unfiltered truths about each other. And in that quiet park, beneath the streaked sky, I realized I liked Serafina. Not Clara, not Sophia, Serafina. It wasn't declared, it wasn't shouted, but it was undeniable, and the most remarkable part, I had a feeling she felt the same. Our clown car therapy sessions had evolved into something far more unpredictable and infinitely more thrilling. For me, romance had always been performative, songs, poetry, grand gestures. But now, every gesture was aimed at an audience of one who actually cared. Serafina, I found myself showing her my poetry, scribbled lyrics, and even the small TikTok shorts I had created. Not the ones I had written exclusively for her, maybe those were for another time. Okay, this one is experimental, I said one afternoon, phone in hand. It's about, let's just say, a certain pair of star-crossed dorm room dwellers. She leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, expression neutral. The meter's off in the second line, but the imagery, surprisingly evocative. You might want to tone down the hyperbole, though. I blinked, slightly offended. Tone down the hyperbole? Serafina, this is me. She shrugged, utterly unbothered, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. I know. I'm just helping you refine it. For the people who might actually read it without falling asleep. It was blunt, honest, perfectly Serafina. And for once, I didn't mind. I even felt a surge of pride because I knew she meant it. She wasn't mocking me. She was participating, engaging, helping me grow. Weeks later, I had a sizable following. And it wasn't one-sided. She had her own methods, more practical, more lavish. She would show up at my dorm with ridiculous gifts, a custom sketchbook I had casually mentioned, a bouquet of flowers that matched the obscure shades of my favourite paintings, even a day trip to a botanical garden Sophia never would have tolerated. I learned to appreciate her gestures, even when they overwhelmed me. This was her language of care, structured, precise, and undeniably thoughtful. Then came the cooking, a disaster by every metric. Flour coated the floor like a winter snowfall. Eggs cracked on countertops rather than in bowls, and the smoke alarm had become a mocking chorus. Serafina, what are you doing? I shrieked, stepping over a rolling pin. The kitchen was a war zone. It turns out neither of us knew how to bake. Serafina shrugged, then did something that went beyond her normal programming. She flicked a puff of flour straight at my face. I picked up a whisk and chased her around the kitchen island. We were laughing, and the night was cooling down, when she suddenly tripped and crashed into me. Neither of us spoke for a moment, only holding on to each other under the pendant light. I finally whispered, looking in her eyes, What are we? Serafina fixed me with a stare, like I had just asked if the sun was hot. Then she did something utterly unlike her usual precision. She leaned in and kissed me. Soft, deliberate, teasing, and warm. Pulling back slightly, she smirked again. Guess. She sounded confident, but she was completely red all the way from her flower, stained forehead down to her neck. I laughed, breathless, spinning slightly with disbelief. We came a long way since our clown car days, huh? She smirked, tilting her head. I still have the key fob. After the kiss, the world seemed to spin normally. Our relationship blossomed into a blissful, ordinary life together. And on an ordinary, sunny afternoon, I finally came to on a piece of juicy gossip from my old roommate, Jenny. Clara and Sophia, the muses of our past heartaches, had finally run out of steam. The Instagram post that once fueled my fantasies now served as comic relief in real life. Sophia's initial excitement over Clara's attention had faded fast. She was high maintenance, demanding, constantly fishing for validation. Clara, who had once seemed distant but polite to me, now found Sophia's insecurities exhausting. They bickered, snapped, and tripped over their own inflated expectations. They were busy battling each other with passive comments over their social media. I watched, curled up on my couch with Serafina sprawled across the other side, and couldn't help but laugh. Quietly at first, then louder, then until our sides hurt. You know, Serafina said, shaking her head, I did everything for her. Expensive gifts, tickets, favors. She treated me like a personal concierge and a cash dispenser. I nodded, grinning. And I wrote poetry, orchestrated picnics, composed songs. Clara's idea of gratitude? Add it to the pile. We laughed again, louder this time, the sound freeing, cathartic. The people who had caused us such personal anguish were finally paying the price of their own superficiality. I leaned back, twirling a pen between my fingers. Do you think Sophia would have cheated on you if things had gone differently? Serafina rolled her eyes, a triumphant little smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Duh, of course she would. I laughed, feeling a strange, liberating weight lift off my chest. All the grand gestures, all the heartbreak, all the humiliation. It had been a crucible. And through it, we had each other. It wasn't a romance born of fantasy or misreading signals. It was built from surviving the ridiculous, the absurd, and the heartbreak together. While Clara and Sophia's relationship crumbled under its own superficiality, we were quietly thriving, learning what real connection looked like. And in that moment, with Serafina's arm brushing mine on the couch, I realized the clowns had found something real in the wreckage of our pasts. I glanced at her from across the room after the day their falling out became official. She's reading a book, fingers tracing the pages, eyes focused, but there's that faint smirk I know means she's thinking about some minor absurdity we'll laugh about later. And I feel a warmth that isn't the heat of infatuation. It's deeper, steadier, entirely grounding. Love, I realize, isn't always a grand performance. Sometimes it's the quiet moments, the shared smiles, the knowledge that someone is there through the ridiculousness and the heartbreak. I glanced at the very large diamond on the ring on my finger, and my heart did another silly flip. This is not the ending of a storm making the carnival close early. This is the beginning of a shared laugh that will last for a lifetime.